A labour of love. Her name was Sardines, and she was the most beautiful mutant rat lady I had ever seen, but tomorrow she would marry someone else. I had loved her since I first saw her, and for a brief time I basked in her sunlight. But did Sardines ever love anyone apart from herself? I wasn't sure. I had always lived on the edge of this strange, broken world that we inhabited, the extremes of weather making life a precious and desperate thing. Some people still had plenty, others sank into the depths. I was clinging on by my claw fingers, trying not to sink. I made shoes for the ones who still had plenty. The human obsession with fancy shoes had not died with the fish in the ocean. It was thriving and as obsessive as ever, like a virus. I worked alone in my dim little workshop with just a few hand tools, my imagination, and my love of beautiful things. The days were long and lonely, but as each pair came to life, I felt a glow in my heart that sustained me. This joy of creation would fade all too quickly, and the walls of my workshop would darken in on me, so I would move on to fashion the next pair. I was driven by the hunger to see them finished, to see their glory live in a world of dying, and to fill the emptiness that gnawed at my soul. Preparations were in full swing for the wedding. This was to be the grandest, most decadent affair in mutant rat history. In fact, in human history too. No more scurrying in the dark corners or eating out of bins for us. No more hanging onto the edges of the waning human world. We were thriving. We were living fully in the light, free to love and live as we chose. Unfortunately, Sardines hadn't chosen me. It was her strong, defiant jaw that had first attracted me. What a smile! I felt that anything would be possible in her company. She had a magnetic presence that made you feel like you were really living. Like she knew how to live and she would teach you the secret. A devil-may-care attitude that made her drive too fast, drink too much, and throw away her lovers like chocolate wrappers when she was done. We had met one night at the Floopy Bar, a popular late-night bar that was shabby, sticky, and full of lust and loneliness, a place people went to forget their broken dreams. Sardines was there with a group of admirers, perched on the bonnet of her burnt-out sports car. She had her arm round one, another held her drink, and one sat at her feet adoringly waiting to light her cigarette or use their hand as an ashtray. Sardines' insouciance in the situation was fascinating to me. I watched her queenly movements and the way the admirers ebbed and flowed in the wake of every gesture. I stood at the bar and observed her for a bit, sipping my fluorescent glass of cat milk beer. In a city full of millions, mutant rats, humans, and real ratty rats, all crushed up against each other, elbowing each other for space and commodities, I often had the feeling I was all alone. I looked around the bar at everyone talking and drinking. They all seemed connected, invisible strings tethering them to one another and the surroundings. I, on the other hand, felt loose, like I was floating above the crowd, a glass ceiling dividing us, and I had no way to break through. Every day, as I worked in my shop making shoes, clients came in, words were exchanged, but nothing more. The surface of civility remained intact. Sardines made a comment, and everybody laughed apart from me. It hadn't penetrated the glass. Out of the corner of her eye, she must have sensed my stillness, as I swear she didn't look at me. She took a drag from her cigarette and exhaled, the smoke making taunting patterns in the air. Looking back, it must have irked her to know that there was someone not under her spell, and she probably resolved immediately to destroy me. But at the time, my feelings were those of someone drowning, and she was about to throw me a lifebelt. I don't know how it happened, but she bought me a drink, we talked, and that was it, the beginning of the end. She drove me home in her car, her tail tantalizingly brushing against me, and the green morning sky leering overhead. During our romance, I had given Sardines many pairs of shoes as tokens of my love. I worked over each pair, believing that if I made them perfect, Sardines would love me more. I poured my love into them. Each pair took a tiny piece of my soul. A pinprick of blood, a drop of sweat, a tiny grey hair. These things melded into the shoes, and they almost danced on their own with life and love. I decided to make a pair of wedding shoes for Sardines. It would be the greatest pair I had ever made. They would show her what she missed when she rejected me. For many days and nights I worked on them. I used the finest silks and velvet. My stitches were so tiny they were invisible. I sourced precious gems to decorate and commissioned the tiny mice lace makers to work the most intricate details. As I worked, a few tears rolled down my long nose and dropped it onto the shoes as I thought of the moments we had shared, the wet making dark circles like bloodstains on the fabric. Memories of us together ran through my mind like a movie. How we laughed as we watched the purple smoke come out of the cat milk factory in the shape of a penis. The time she found a whole avocado on the street, a very rare thing in these times, and we ate it together, rolling each bite around on our tongues and spitting it into each other's mouths. Hours spent entwined together, breathing each other's breath, running my tongue along the rough scar on her breast, the symbol of her survival and strength. Did she really love me in those moments, or had I been alone and I didn't know it? The memories played over and over, accompanied each time with slightly different emotions: love, sorrow, longing, despair, anger, and then love again, round and round as I worked away. The day of the wedding and the shoes were finished and delivered in a white cardboard box with a huge pink satin bow. I didn't put a note. She would know they were from me. How many other shoemakers' hearts had she broken recently, and there was no one who made shoes like me. She was tough, a survivor, ruthless, greedy and egotistical, but she had the common weakness of all living beings. She couldn't resist beautiful shoes. I put on a black veil, feeling that it added suitable drama to the situation. There would be many of Sardine's ex-lovers at the ceremony, so I wouldn't feel out of place. Sardines had chosen the biggest of the human cathedrals for the wedding, even though religion was a thing of the past, and the buildings were now mostly used as prawn cocktail crisp factories. She always liked that vintage look. A hush fell as the big doors opened. Sardines walked up the aisle wearing the shoes I had made for her, a bra, knickers, and a long white veil. Us mutants had always been able to pick and choose the bits of human culture that we wanted. She looked fantastic, as desirable and unobtainable as always. I wasn't entirely sure why she had decided to marry this lover. Maybe it was part of her destruction, another twist of the knife, the 1001th paper cut, the ultimate punishment in the world. This lover didn't look particularly special as she waited for Sardines at the top of the aisle. In fact, she looked like a nervous but adoring jelly, someone who can't quite believe their luck but knows that they are deeply unqualified for the role. I wondered if she could feel the waves of jealous animosity coming out of the audience. The ceremony was a mixture of lines from different TV shows. They pledged their undying love in many overblown and fanciful ways, weeping and dipping into self-conscious sincerity. When the celebrant said the line, "I now pronounce you wife and wife," Sardines took a great leap in the air and kicked herself in the head. She couldn't control her legs, and they began kicking and kicking. She kicked her bouquet like a football. She kicked a pillar which made the roof tremble, and everybody screamed. She kept on and on kicking herself in the head. Her wife was trying to dodge the blows, but also trying to stop her. The celebrant ran for cover, and there was chaos in the congregation, as some tried to help and others tried to run. Amidst the chaos, a sort of collective euphoria seemed to swell and sweep through the room, lifting us up, as if all the chains and ties that held us to Sardines were broken. Seeing her out of control, her legs flailing comically, she no longer had power in our minds, and we were set free. No more heart-wrenching and wondering why we weren't good enough for her. No more jealous claws grasping at our hearts and twisting bitterly. No more days hanging round places she might be, hoping to accidentally bump into her and play out a scenario we had rehearsed in our heads in the lonely hours past midnight. Scenario where we were suave and cool, and she realised how ultimately desirable we were. We realised that we weren't alone, that we weren't unique in our misery, and we realised that Sardines was a bit of a shit. How she had learnt to survive meant the destruction of others. The veil had lifted. I smiled serenely under my own black veil and strolled casually towards the giant buffet table at the back, which was groaning under the weight of the feast. I thought it wouldn't matter if I had the first slice of cake. There wouldn't be any ceremonial cutting or a first dance now. The wedding cake was enormous, definitely overcompensating for something. I cut into the thick icing and took a big slice. It tasted so delicious, how you imagine revenge would actually taste, but so much better. It hadn't been my intention to curse the shoes, but if that was what had happened, then I was rather delighted with the results. No one could ever take her seriously after this, and perhaps it would stop more hearts being broken. She was just a mutant rat like the rest of us, flawed and a bit broken, not some divine goddess. Although tinged with a small sadness at what could have been, I was finally free to move on with my life. I licked the cream off a cherry and wondered what the future held for me. It was exciting. I could do anything I want, but I would probably make some shoes and maybe branch into hats.